Hello and welcome to Ask the Expert number 3, PFAS in private water. We are going to talk about POU and POE treatment options. We'll go ahead and get started. A couple housekeeping items. The webinar is being recorded, and the recording link will be provided to all of you once I receive it after the webinar. And for any questions that you may have throughout the session, please use the Q&A box to drop those. All right. I also wanted to mention that if you haven't joined the private water network yet, it is free to join and you should absolutely join. I will drop the link to the website in just a few. All right, so now let's begin. Our Ask the Expert is Eric Yeggy today. He is the Technical Affairs Director for the Water Quality Association. Eric holds a bachelor's degree in chemistry from the University of Northern Iowa and began his career in the environmental testing industry. As an analytical chemist in the testing industry, he holds a wealth of knowledge, including gas chromatography, mass spectroscopy, inductively coupled plasma analysis. Boy, Eric, these are difficult. And numerous other techniques used to test wastewater, soil, drinking water, consumer products, and industrial materials. So I want to thank those of you who did submit the short survey that I had sent out, where you shared any barriers or challenges and some questions. And we are going to start with a question from Daphne Dunn in Sonoma, California. She wrote, I am new to environmental health, so I haven't yet encountered any issues. I look forward to learning from others' experiences. What are the primary sources of PFAS in private water?
Well, thank you, Nicole. So I'm going to go ahead and start with a visual here and share my screen. Hopefully this works out. Okay. So this graphic was developed by the EPA. Can you see that okay, Nicole?
Absolutely.
This graphic was developed by the EPA, and I think the primary takeaway from this graphic was intended to be, we continually are recycling PFAS into our water. It's almost like a part of the water cycle now. And but if you look at where the sources are, the source starts on the left here with the industries. You have chemical industries that are making the chemicals, and then you have other industries that are using those chemicals in the manufacture of products. And those industries may be discharging directly to a surface water source, in which case the PFAS can get into the surface water, and from there it can infiltrate the groundwater. Or they may be discharging to a wastewater treatment plant, which is probably more common. Once it goes into the wastewater treatment plant, the PFAS is, again, it's going to go through the treatment plant. A lot of it's going to end up in the discharge, which will, again, go directly to surface water and then on into groundwater. A lot of it is also going to end up in the biosolids, which are then used for fertilizer. So they're put on a field, used for fertilizer, and from the field it can then infiltrate down into the groundwater, or runoff can take it directly into the surface water again, where it ends up in the groundwater. Also, in the top right, you have homes where we're using a lot of these products that are produced with PFAS. And a lot of that waste, the waste from those products, or once those products are used, they end up back in the landfill. And then the PFAS leaches out of those waste products and ends up back in the wastewater treatment plant, and the cycle starts again. Also in the bottom right, it shows firefighting foam as a major source here, which is definitely true. So if you have a private well owner who's located near an airport, near a military base, any place where they've been practicing putting out fires, that firefighting foam containing high levels of PFAS and generally was either being directly discharged into a surface water or through runoff, ended up in surface water or infiltrated into the groundwater. So that's kind of the sources of all the PFAS. Oh, I also should mention, if you are working with a private well owner and you're finding PFAS in their water, it isn't necessarily true that all the PFAS or that the PFAS is coming from the aquifer. The plumbing materials and materials that are used in the well industry can also contain PFAS, and some of that PFAS can also leach into the water. So things like gaskets, O-rings, hosing, tubing, pipelinings, and even some types of bentonite can contain PFAS.
Great, thank you, Eric. All right, our next question came from Frankie Pridgen from Wake, North Carolina. He commented about testing capability for local government and funding for testing. He asked, what are the long-term health risks associated with PFAS on children or high-risk individuals?
So I'm a chemist, and the conversations around the health impacts of PFAS have been hotly debated in the toxicology world. And so I don't want to speak for the toxicologists. I'm going to defer to the EPA on this one and tell you what they are identifying as the health impacts. And they kind of have categorized the health impacts into two large buckets. One being there's these health impacts that we know of that are supported by peer-reviewed scientific research, and that includes reproductive effects, developmental effects or delays in children, increased risks of some cancers, reduced ability of the body's immune system and interference with natural hormones, increased cholesterol levels, and risk of obesity. And then there's a second bucket, which they identify broadly as these are other things we need more research on to fully understand. And that definitely does include the exposure and the risk to pregnant women and children, and largely because the EPA acknowledges that the pregnant women and children can have a higher exposure rate. For example, children drink more water, they eat more food per pound of body weight than adults, so they can have a higher exposure rate.
Great, thank you, Eric. Our next question comes from Tom DeBell from Chittenden, Vermont. He commented, regulation of PFAS as a hazardous waste, lack of NSF ANSI certification of treatment products that can treat to below 60 ppt, lack of literature that use current lowest analytical methods down to 2 ppt. Where can a private homeowner have their water tested for PFAS? Are there data-driven concerns about homeowners collecting their own samples versus hiring a consultant to take them?
So let's take the first question real quick. That's an easy one. The EPA has a website to help people find certified drinking water laboratories in their state. This slide shows how you can get to that website, or if you have trouble navigating to it, reach out to me. I can help point you towards it. Before I go into to answer Tom's second question, Nicole, could you go ahead and read the next question from Don Kendrick and then the following question from Valerie Jackson, because all three of those questions are kind of related, and I will try to answer all three at the same time for the sake of efficiency.
Perfect. So Don Kendrick from Hartford, Connecticut, his question was, I know this is the next disaster plague of the month. I'm really interested how we can be sure of the results received when just sampling is a challenge. And Valerie Jackson from Canada, British Columbia, she wrote a comment, community concerns about it in well water sources. With this being a newer concern, it will be helpful to have clear guidelines, sampling procedures, and policies for how to assess for, collect samples, and treatment recommendations and abilities. Her question was, is there a well-documented standardized sampling process that needs to be followed when sampling water for PFAS?
Perfect. So let me first unpack the underlying issue that these commenters and attendees are referring to. It is very easy to contaminate a sample with PFAS while you are collecting it. I once tried to make a list of all of the products that might contain PFAS and could be a source of contamination during sampling, and I gave up because it was too long and it was becoming ridiculous. But I mean, it would include things like shaving, perfume, deodorant, antiperspirant, sunscreen, insect repellent, waterproof pens, paper, scotch tape, and on and on and on. There's just a ton of things that could potentially contain PFAS that might contaminate your sample. And so that's a challenge. In terms of the sampling guidance, there is a lot of sampling guidance available to people to help with that issue. The analytical methods are going to contain basic guidance on how to collect the sample and how to preserve the sample for each analytical method. The laboratory that you choose for testing is then going to take that guidance from the analytical method, they're going to adapt it to their own procedures, and they're going to give you instructions. And it's especially important that you pay attention to the laboratory instructions, especially when it comes to the amount of sample to collect, the type of bottle to use, and any preservation instructions. Because if you don't follow the laboratory instructions, you may actually interfere with their analytical method. And then beyond that, there are a lot of more comprehensive sampling guides that have been issued by states and other organizations that will help you address this contamination issue and avoid sources of contamination. Michigan has a great one, for example. I've listed some of the other ones here that I'm aware of. If anybody else is aware of other ones, please reach out to me, let me know. I'd be happy to add them to this list, add them to my list. Also, another tip that I would like to offer here is to ask the laboratory if they will include a field blank at no charge or at a discounted rate, especially if you're going to be collecting multiple samples. And also, if you're going to be collecting multiple samples, it would be worthwhile to ask them if you can drop by in the morning, collect some laboratory water from them in a carboy so that you have a clean source of water that doesn't contain PFAS that you can use in the field to wash your equipment and to wash your hands. Especially if you're going to have something like a baler involved that's going to touch every sample that you collect. But if you're just filling bottles from a tap, right? You're just turning on a faucet, filling bottles, then the most important piece of equipment you're going to have is your gloves. And you're going to want to use disposable powderless nitrile gloves, not any of these other types of gloves that are listed here. And this is another thing to ask the laboratory about. They may be willing, especially if you're doing, again, multiple samples, they may be willing to throw in a pair of these disposable gloves for each bottle that they're providing.
Nice tips, Eric. I'm gonna address the Q&A really quick, Eric. Tom DeBell, he made a comment that from the list of EPA certified labs, very few of them have the ability to test for PFAS. Do you know of any other options for people to look at?
Yeah, it is going to take some shopping around to figure out which ones can test for PFAS, and you're going to want a lab that has detection limits in the 2 to 4 parts per trillion range, and that is generally achievable now in the laboratory industry. So I think at least the ones that do test for PFAS are going to be able to hit those detection limits because that's commonly what everybody's using at this point. But no, there is really no silver bullet other than it takes some shopping around to find one that is capable of doing the PFAS testing.
Okay, thank you. All right, our next question comes from Amanda Husband in Union, Iowa. Her comment was regarding testing costs. and asked, do you have any recommendations on how to minimize the cost of testing?
So first of all, again, it pays to shop around, compare pricing between the laboratories, pay attention to what they're providing, and ask them if there's going to be any additional fees or charges. And when you talk to the lab, make it clear that this is a private well sample. You don't want to say this is a drinking water. I'm collecting drinking water samples, because in laboratory jargon, that often equates in their mind to, oh, this is a compliance sample under the Safe Drinking Water Act, which means I'm going to have to generate an electronic deliverable, send it off to the primacy agency, yada, yada, yada. So there's a lot of steps involved in analyzing compliance drinking water samples under the Safe Drinking Water Act that you don't want to pay for when you're just doing a private well sample. So just make sure you're clear with them it's a private well sample. Also check with the local public health department before you select a laboratory, because they may have programs that assist private well owners with testing and treatment. And they may even have agreements with some of those local labs as part of that funding opportunity. So check with the local public health department first. And then lastly, I will say that there's a broad understanding that this is a big need, that PFAS is going to be with us for a while. And there's a big need for less expensive forms of or techniques for testing. And so there is a lot of research and development work being done in that area, and we do track that at WQA. And if there is, for example, one of those techniques that is already commercially available. And so if you're interested in that and sort of these alternative testing techniques that are not necessarily approved yet for compliance drinking water samples, reach out to me and I'd be happy to share whatever we know with you at the time.
Great, thank you, Eric. Next question came from Mary Lennon in Bucks, Pennsylvania. Just looking for info, my private well tested PFOA of 2.5 and PFOS of 4.6. Test results from Euphorins Environment Testing located in Horsham, Pennsylvania. What treatments are needed?
So the three in-home treatments that have been broadly tested and proven effective with removing PFAS are point of use reverse osmosis, carbon filtration, which can be either done at the point of use or point of entry to the home, like whole house filtration, and then anion exchange. Anion exchange systems tend to be larger whole house systems where you contract with a water treatment company to provide a tank exchange service. So they will bring you a fresh tank that's newly regenerated, and then when that one's exhausted, they come swap it out periodically with a new tank. They take the old one back to their shop and regenerate it and continue that cycle. And these systems are available in lots of different sizes and varieties, and lots of options to choose from out there.
Great, thank you, Eric. Let's see. It looks like we have another question that Tom DeBell had sent in to us. Is reverse osmosis the best POU treatment, or is carbon filtration just as effective?
So with all of these systems, what I would start by making it clear that not every reverse osmosis system is designed to remove PFAS. Not every carbon filter is designed to remove PFAS. Not every anion exchange resin is designed to remove PFAS. So it's really important that you're looking for systems that are either certified to remove PFAS or at least have been tested, and they can provide you some test data to show you performance with PFAS, because these systems are not all designed to do that. But and once you get beyond that, as long as the system has been either tested or certified, then you can have a pretty good confidence that all of these different technologies are going to work.
Eric, how do you identify which ones do work on PFAS?
Which products? Yes. So there is there are NSF certification standards And let me try to unpack that here a bit for you because it is confusing right now. So this slide shows you, compares the NSF certification standards to the EPA rule. And there are currently, I believe, 7 or 8 different organizations, including WQA, us, that are nationally accredited to certify to these NSF standards. So we take products into our laboratory, we test them for the claims that the manufacturer has in their marketing materials and either approve or disprove that those products are operating as advertised. We also test for safety and for leaks and for things like that, just to make sure that the products are safe and durable and all. But if you look at here on the left-hand side, the red font columns here show the NSF standard criteria in the 2021 version of those standards. And at that time, we were looking for products that could reduce PFAS down to 70 parts per trillion. I think Tom alluded to this earlier in one of his comments, that it's difficult to find products that are certified to go below 60 parts per trillion. Well, they're actually probably certified to go below 70, actually. Most of the products out there right now that are certified and on the shelf are certified to this 2021 version of the standards. Now, we were part of a task force that pushed out changes to the standards in 2022. And at that time, we added more PFAS chemicals, which is shown here in the blue font, and we lowered the criteria down to 20. But by then, everybody was aware that the EPA was going to publish something. Nobody knew exactly what they were going to publish, but it was widely known they were going to publish something. And so it made more sense to everybody to just wait and not retest everything until we understood what the EPA was going to publish, and then decide if we had to change the NSF standards again, or whether or not the 2022 version would be harmonized with the EPA rule. And you can see the EPA rule here on the right in the black font. And obviously, we still have some work to do to harmonize the NSF standards with the EPA rule. We are, again, part of a task force. That work is ongoing right now. It's happening right now. So that work is being done. And hopefully, there will be a harmonized version of these standards published later this year, which will meet the EPA requirements. And at that time, all of these products are going to go into a cycle where they have to be retested again to meet the new standard. So that's where the certification currently lies. Right now, if you are seeing a product out there that's certified, it's most likely certified to the 2021 version, which means less than 70 parts per trillion. And you're probably seeing that number cited in the product literature. The one thing I can add in the interim is when the EPA did come out with their proposed rule, we went back and we reevaluated all of our previous data from testing products. And we looked at our detection limit at that time was around 2 to 4 parts per trillion. So we could already see below what the EPA was testing or proposing to have as standards. And we reevaluated all those products to just look at them and see, well, what would have happened if we evaluated them against the proposed EPA rule, which at that time was 4 parts per trillion. And in almost all cases, it looked like those products would be able to pass. So I think and in the cases that didn't, they were close. So probably those manufacturers will be able to get there with a little bit of tweaking and reformulation. So bottom line from all this is, I suspect that if you took a product that is certified for PFAS removal right now, and you installed it on a private well where you were seeing some, levels of PFAS in the water, and you tested the filtered water, you would probably find that it is already that treated water is already showing non-detect levels of PFAS or something below 4 parts per trillion. So good news is that the systems are capable and will be capable, I think, of hitting the new EPA rule. The bad news is we have some work to do to harmonize the standards first.
Oh, good. Thank you. Very good explanation, Eric. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Our next question from Valerie Jackson in Canada. Yes, another question. She asked, is there a NSF certification for certain point of use treatments?
Yep. So that's this table. And So for filters, it would be NSF ANSI standard 53. For RO systems, it would be NSF ANSI standard 58. And then for the anion exchange systems, they could be certified under 53, but more typically they're large systems and it would be impractical to certify them under 53. So they're just certified for material safety under NSF ANSI 61. And in that case, you need to ask the manufacturer to provide test data to have some assurance on performance.
All right, thank you. Our next question comes from Tom Eckhoff in Bucks, Pennsylvania. He commented, with POU, POE treatment options, RO or filters, the contaminants PFAS are not removed from the environment. RO rejects, concentrates the contaminants and transfers it down the line, either to the POTW or on-site septic tank. The filters go to the landfill, and PFAS probably ends up as a leachate. It is a never-ending cycle. What is the ultimate solution to remove PFAS from the environment and end the never-ending cycle?
Yeah, great question. So back to our PFAS water cycle. This is just my opinion, but this is a very good point. As we talked about earlier, we're just continually recycling PFAS back into the environment right now. That's basically what's happening. I think my opinion is that we won't get ahead of this problem until we start looking at source control. In other words, preventing the PFAS from getting into the environment in the first place. And that's a ways down the road. What I would recommend for people right now, for who are working with private well owners, is keep in mind that the primary responsibility of the private well owner and their primary interest is in protecting themselves and their family from contaminants in the water. So when you're working with the private well owner, try to think about it in terms of the perspective of protection. How do I help this person protect themselves and their family, as opposed to trying to think about it in terms of remediation.
Thank you, Eric. Our next question came from Bonnie in Nez Perce County, Idaho. She commented, currently only our public water systems are being tested for PFAS. Our biggest challenge is getting private well owners to even test their water systems for bacteria. Private systems will want to know what the health impacts are for PFAS on their own private well and why they should even test for PFAS and how to treat it. If costs for treatment are too high, which is all relative to each individual, will there be funding to help with costs?
Yes. So the EPA rule included $1 billion in funding to help private well owners and small systems with testing and treatment. And I believe those funds are being distributed through this Emerging Contaminant Small or Disadvantaged Communities Grant Program. So again, contact local health department, find out if they are taking advantage, if they have any programs that are pulling any of that money. Also, we recognize, WQA recognizes that this is really a long-term problem, right? PFAS is not going away anytime soon. We've talked about the cycle, the recycling PFAS back into the environment. It's pervasive in the environment already. It's going to be a long-term problem. It needs a long-term solution. And that's why we have been promoting what we call the Healthy H2O Act. Let's see if I can get to that here. I'll move my toolbar down so I can actually reach it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll do it this way. We call it the Healthy H2O Act, but I believe the proper name for it is the Healthy Drinking Water Affordability Act. And this act is intended to help private well owners and small systems with funding for testing and treatment. And there is a website, page, I should say, on our website, which talks about this act. Right now, it has bipartisan support in both the House and the Senate. But we would really appreciate if this is an issue that you're passionate about. We would really appreciate it if NEHA and your members would be willing to reach out to your representatives in DC and urge them to vote for the Healthy H2O Act. And we do have resources here on our website to help you with that type of outreach. So hopefully there'll be good news in the future on that.
Yes, absolutely. Eric, do you think you could drop the link to that website into the chat for everyone?
Good.
Thank you. All right. Our next question, I know we are sitting at 9:31:32 now. I think we just have a few more questions if you all want to continue to hang out with us here. We'll try to get through these quickly. All right. Our next question came from Sheila Giffen from Leeds, Grenville, and Lanark District in Ontario. Some SDWS use hydrogen peroxide without an engineer's report or assessment. What are all the system requirements if hydrogen peroxide was used instead of chlorine? What are the benefits and disadvantages?
So neither hydrogen peroxide or chlorine is going to have any impact on your PFAS levels. It's not going to destroy PFAS or help you remove PFAS. And as long as they're dosed at the normal levels that would be safe for use in drinking water for the purpose of disinfection, then they're not going to have any impact on the types of treatment that we're talking about today.
All right, thank you, Eric. Moving right along, our next question came from Rachel McCauley in Wake, North Carolina. Wake County does not have an abundance of data regarding PFAS in groundwater, so assisting well owners in determining their best course of action is challenging. For example, should a well owner with limited resources spend hundreds of dollars testing their water for PFAS if it means they won't have the means to test for other contaminants we often see? And what if they have resources to test PFAS, but no means of treating it? What are some ways we can advocate for well owners that address PFAS, but also use the opportunity to educate about other important contaminants?
So that's a very good question, a great topic. If you look at point of use and point of entry systems, if you've worked with them at all or looked at them, looked at the certifications, you'll quickly realize that these systems are designed and certified to remove multiple contaminants. And it's going to be different for each manufacturer. They're going to target the marketing claims or the reduction claims towards the consumers that they're trying to reach. So I've shown here 3 actual systems. I'm not going to name the systems because I don't want to endorse specific systems, but these are just 3 examples of certified systems for PFAS removal. System A is an under-counter filter certified for PFOA and PFOS. Again, this is under the 2021 version of the standards. And it's also certified to remove lead and VOCs, or volatile organics. System B is a refrigerator filter, and it's, again, has the PFAS, certified PFAS claims, but in this case, it's lead, pesticides, and herbicides. System C is an RO system, and it has, again, the PFAS claims, but also certified for removal of arsenic, nitrate, hexavalent chromium, trivalent chromium, radium-226, and 228. So all of these contaminants are things that can easily be found in private wells. And so if the homeowner needs treatment for PFAS anyway, they might as well test for the other contaminants in order to determine what else is in their water so that when they do make a purchasing decision on treatment, they're actually able to select the system that provides them the most value and the most protection for their dollar. So I think it is a great opportunity to talk with them about doing some additional testing beyond just the PFAS.
Thank you, Eric. I'm going to address one more. Sherry Storhuan. Sorry if I didn't say your name correctly, from Carroll Crawford County in Iowa. She just made a comment of we don't have a lot of information yet on this topic. And Eric would like to share some upcoming educational sessions on PFAS that he would like to suggest attending.
Yeah, these are actually at the upcoming NEHA Annual Education Conference. So on Tuesday, July 16th, there is a talk on PFAS by Stan Hazan and Joe Catrubo. And then on Wednesday, July 17th, I will be doing a talk as well on assisting disadvantaged and underserved homeowners with removal of PFAS from drinking water. So a couple of good talks there. I should also mention we do have a website where that we call the PFAS portal. So if I see if I can get to the portal here. If you go to our website and you use the search bar here to search for the PFAS portal, there's a lot of information on this portal. It's called the PFAS portal for water treatment professionals. There's a lot of information on this portal that is available to the public. Now, a lot of it is geared specifically towards our members. So like you won't have access to the dealer guide unless you're actually a WQA member. But there's a video here, 5 things you should know about PFAS. There's a consumer guide here, which is available to everyone, and just lots of background information on this website in general about PFAS. So some good resources there as well.
Great. Eric, will you drop that link also in the chat for everyone?
Will do.
And I did drop the link for the annual educational conference, which starts July 15th and runs through the 18th. And it is in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania this year. And just to mention, there are over 40 sessions related to water quality at the AEC this year. So just wanted to share. All right. Looks like we have come to the end. I want to thank everyone for attending today. I hope Eric was able to provide lots of wonderful information and details and assistance. So thank you, Eric.
If I could share my contact information real quick, just for everybody.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you want to drop your email in the chat for them as well, that might be good too.
Yeah, let me do that.
Perfect. All right, so Eric dropped his contact information into the chat for all of you. Once the recording is available, I will send that out in an email to all of you for attending today. Thank you so much, and hope all of you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.